An eventful weekend again here in Northeast Florida with some crime. And joining us to talk about it is Chase Robinson, Executive Director of First Coast Crime Stoppers. Hey, Chase. The other Chase is back as well. So we have both Chases in studio.
It's Chase squared this morning.
Hot Chase on Chase action.
Family show. So you were busy this weekend with news about some shootings. Explain for people kind of what your involvement is when there's crime.
So the biggest thing is, in the case over the weekend, being that both shootings, the suspects are at large, and that police don't really have a description or a lot of information to go off of. So our job in these is to provide as much community information to detectives as possible. And that comes in the form of community tips. So making sure people are aware of events like these, when they happen, where they happen, and then what they need to be on the lookout for, whether it's a timing situation. When did the gunshots occur? How many people did you see fleeing the scene? Do you have any idea or any information on why, say, a certain meeting occurred or why these individuals were in the area that they were? It's really just providing as many tools for the detectives to use in their toolbox to ultimately make an arrest.
So part of your job is really just to kind of be aware and be available when law enforcement says, hey, we need tips, we need help. Even if, your job is definitely not a 9 to 5, show up during the weekdays.
No, it never stops. The weekends and holidays, we're always on alert. And when it comes to monitoring the tips that do come in, we do that 24/7, 365 days a week. Not only do we have eyes on it here in Jacksonville, we also have a call center in Southeast Texas that is monitoring them as well. So not a single tip will slip through our fingertips, but we want to make sure that, regardless of whether the case is in Duval County, whether it's in Middleburg, Clay County, Fernandina Beach, that we know what's going on in our community, because when those tips come in, we want it to be on the detective's computer, within their site, within minutes, because when it comes to shootings, when it comes to really violent crime or any sort of crime, we want an arrest and we want the case to be solved as soon as possible.
So peel back the curtain a little bit for us. It seems, from a news standpoint, that most of the crime happens in the off hours. Not our traditional 9 to 5 hours, although there is crime, obviously, that happens between 9 and 5. But is that kind of like your day kind of begins when the sun goes down unofficially? No one told you that when you were, going to become the executive director of First Coast Crime Stoppers?
Yeah, it wasn't listed in the job description, but it's assumed. I mean, when you look at crime overall, it does happen in, the late evening hours, early morning hours. Just stereotypically, they do happen throughout all hours of the day, but most likely shootings or gatherings, it typically happens during that wee hour morning. But it's because things happen at times of the day when not many people are awake, not many people are active outside, listening, seeing what they know. That's why it poses a challenge to us. And once people start to wake up that next morning, it's really our job to then be advocates for those cases, to work with our media partners and just get that message out to as many people as possible, because there's a lot of context that plays in, right? So the day before, you could have been told that so-and-so is going to be doing something at this address, or that there's been a gathering of people and that, one person potentially might have a weapon on them and wants to do harm. So that's really kind of what we want the community to be aware of, that there's no insignificant information when it comes to sort of putting the puzzle pieces of these cases together.
We did get an open mic, and I played it earlier this morning about the number of shootings that took place over the weekend in Jacksonville. What can you tell us about any of those cases?
So the biggest thing, one, the suspects are still at large, and any information is vital information right now. And the biggest thing that we want to be able to give to law enforcement is sort of a compass, right? We want to point them in the right direction so that all of their investigative team can ultimately lead to an arrest. I mean, whether it was the 12-year-old that was shot, or also the individual who was shot, I believe, 8 times and is still alive. But in that case, whether it's a style of weapon that was used, the individual who was using the weapon, a suspect description, anything, whether they used a vehicle to walk away, whether they ran away, things like that is really what detectives are looking for, because it cuts down on their investigative time and also leads to an arrest being made, which is going to remove a potentially dangerous person from the streets.
And, when people commit crimes, the biggest thing, people used to joke in the mafia, like if you're really in the mafia, you don't talk about it. And if you do something, you keep it quiet. That was a big thing because nobody keeps it quiet. So somebody is talking out there that they did this shooting, or somebody saw the shooting, or somebody knows where the gun came from, right? So people know.
And it's also an avenue for social media to play into investigations nowadays, because on whether it's Snapchat, Reddit, all these different digital media, social media platforms, people talk a lot, and they talk a lot about what they might have done. And we also implore people to take those screenshots, to take those screen recordings if someone's going live on Facebook or any of these platforms, because that's information that can be used to ultimately make an arrest, and it can help point those investigators in the right direction. So all forms of, whether you directly see it with your own eyes or it's, like I said, on social media, it can all play a factor in helping out law enforcement.
It surprises me the number of people who pose and post pictures online with the actual firearms or weapons that were used in something. It may not be a post that has any reference to that activity. It might just be, a thugalicious post with, look at my array of guns. But it surprises me the number of people who do that, because it is a fairly large amount of people.
It's unfortunately very common. And a big thing there is if someone's out there in the community and you see that, take that screenshot and submit an anonymous tip. There's so much information that can come of that. Sure, there might not have been a crime committed with that gun that investigators are aware of, but you don't know how many potential crimes that gun has been involved with. Potentially, if it's been involved in homicides, those guns can be traced to a lot of different crimes and unsolved crimes just by simply law enforcement being able to get their hands on it. And it's just vital information that, you're scrolling on social media just like I do, and you see stuff like that, you might just scroll right past it. But take a moment and think, would this have an impact in my community? And because Crime Stoppers guarantees you to be anonymous and it's a safe and secure way to get that information, you can help out your community without having to get involved. It's a win-win for everyone involved.
We have a lot of folks who own firearms in our community. And I will say some of those firearms are probably not registered. Some of those firearms are, in some cases, historic firearms. Should someone who gets a firearm stolen, even if it's not registered and they're worried about possessing it illegally, now historic firearms obviously don't have to be registered, but should they report those to Crime Stoppers? And if they do report that a firearm was stolen, will they get in trouble then for possessing that unregistered firearm?
So it really depends on the situation too. So there's so many different factors that play into this. But if, for instance, a weapon is stolen, you do want to get that reported, because you don't want to ever be traced back to any crimes that could be potentially committed with those weapons. And we all want to be with our Second Amendment rights, but we want to be responsible with our Second Amendment rights, right? And we don't want that to get in the hands of criminals, children, anything like that. So yes, report that information to Crime Stoppers, whether it's a personal weapon that's been stolen or someone else's weapon that's been stolen, because we see all the time. Just this past fiscal year, we hope sees over 70 weapons, and most of those weapons either were stolen, used in crimes, had their serial numbers etched off of them. So you never know where that weapon might end up. And it's really just people taking responsibility for their actions and then being active members of their community.
Suffice it to say that if you are going to take on the responsibility of owning a firearm, you should take on the responsibility of owning up to it when it's...
Exactly. It's having that responsibility. And I think with a lot of things in life and society, it's the consequences that may or may not come with them, and being understandable and being educated on what to do in that situation.
Recently, I remember we were texting and you were extremely busy because of a cold case that had gotten resolved. My guest is Chase Robinson. He's the executive director of First Coast Crime Stoppers. Tell us a little bit about the cold case, and I'm sure it was happy news for everyone involved. I know I read the story on our website. that Action News Jax had done with the family, one of the family members, the daughter, I believe, of the woman whose murder was solved. But tell us a little bit about the cold case, how long it had been cold, and what happened.
So we're talking about it was the unsolved homicide of Missy Taylor Ellison. It was a 39-year-old cold case that happened back in the late 1980s. And 39 years, right? We say 39 years. That's over 14,000 days. That is a long time.
It's 4 decades.
And to have members of Missy's family both present throughout that entire time that were advocates on behalf of Missy is incredible. And even Casey, her now 39-year-old daughter, who was 13 months old with her mom in the trailer when she was murdered, it's a full circle moment. But this case was solved because of the power of partnerships. So we started a digital cold case press conference series. And
explain what that is.
So we take members of the family, we take detectives from whatever law enforcement agency the cold case is under, and we provide a long-term, in-depth analysis of these cold cases. We use satellite imagery, we use information from the case files, we use the detectives' expertise to provide the public with as much information that they need to hopefully solve the case, right? And a lot of times hearing from family members, hearing their pleas for help, and then also hearing small innuendos of case details. And in this case, it was a log from the fireplace that was used as the murder weapon. It was the 13-month-old Casey who was actually moved from the bedroom onto the living room couch. Little details like that may or may not be included in news articles that we can spend time on ultimately led to an arrest being made. And with our media partners, with all of our law enforcement partners, we reached tens of thousands of people just with that one case alone.
And can I just say it's really important, one of the things that you just said, to take all the pieces and put them together. Because when we report a story in the news, we might report day 1, there was a shooting. Day 2, we may report, the shooting happened. Now we know between whatever time and whatever time. Day 3, we might report, there's been a suspect identified as so-and-so. But beyond that, even if we report it, it's still pieces of information. So our listeners or viewers are not putting everything together. So one of the things that I have seen when you have done these digital press conferences is that you have all of the information in a really nice package. And people can see, oh, okay, I remember that case. It was, the shooting that happened between X and X, and they found a bullet and they found a gun and they identified a suspect. It's just good having all that information together because it might spark something.
Well, in this case, it is an active investigation, so we can't say too much about it, but it was that creating a quilt, if you will, right? Weaving all these pieces together, all these pieces of information into this cohesive package. That was really the element that ultimately assisted JSO in making an arrest, right? Because we presented it in a easy to understand, cohesive manner. That's ultimately what led to an arrest in a 39-year-old cold case. It's amazing just what happens when Crime Stoppers puts together the press conference. Project Cold Case provides a family willing to speak. The JSO provides the wonderful detectives to not only be present at the press conference but continue investigating these cold cases, and then all of our media partners spreading this out over the community. It was a big team effort, but I'm just excited to see where this goes in the future, because if we can continue this, I think this is just the first of many to come.
Is there one thing that you know of in this case? Let's report what we're allowed to report. What happened as a result of the press conference?
So we did the press conference in January, and obviously an arrest was made, was it last week? So during that time frame, there was a lot of just advocacy of that press conference and getting it out to as many people as possible. And ultimately, what's been reported is the individual who wanted to report information on the case and ultimately arrested, he was in Clay County. So he wasn't even in Jacksonville where the murder occurred. So getting that message out to as many people as possible, I think, is ultimately what led to this person coming forward. But I also believe it was Casey, which was Missy's daughter, and then Glenda, which was Missy's sister, telling their heartfelt message on that digital press conference, I think really conveyed a lot of this information to come forward, because a lot of times on news segments or news stories, it's 20, 30-second clip, right? And yes, it's emotional, but if you can give a family member 25 minutes to talk about whatever they want about this case, I think that information ultimately can motivate people who are involved in violent crimes to come forward, because we get caught up in a lot of times of we see black and white names on a news article and there's families behind these. You're talking 39 years. There's generations of people involved here. So to bring justice to this family, knit all these pieces together, I think it's a win-win for everyone.
And of course, innocent until and unless proven guilty in a court of law. But the person who stepped forward was a 70-year-old person. I think even the daughter had wondered why he stepped forward. And, maybe there's something to the fact that just after time, you get tired of holding something in.
Yeah, and so I was fortunate enough to be on the stage with the sheriff when the announcement was made. So I had a front row view, if you will, to the real-time processing of the family, watching them kind of go through this as it plays out. And I guess when you have pent-up emotions for 39 years, you also have a lot of, ideas on maybe who or who did not do this. I think having all of that laid on you in real time, it's a lot to process. And I know the family's very grateful for the work that JSO did, but just like you said, everyone is innocent until proven guilty, and the arrest is just a first step in the judicial process to get to, hopefully in this case, eventually a conviction. But it is a long judicial process that they have to go through now. So it is the first step in the right direction. However, there is still a long, long road ahead.
And, we do have to mention that there is a possibility that this person stepped forward and is not the actual person.
Exactly.
It could be a false confession, because people do that. So we do always qualify things by saying innocent until and unless proven guilty in a court of law. But you do have some other cold cases that are on your website. And I have to say, are you aware that you look like one of the suspects on firstcoastcrimestoppers.com?
Well, I wasn't aware until I walked in the studio this morning. And
so if I had said to AI, give Chase Robinson some earrings and a neck tat and take away his beard and comb his hair forward a little bit, you look like one of the suspects.
Well, there we go. I'm my own suspect on our own website. So,
and I'm certainly not making light of the situation, but I saw the photo and I said, "Oh my gosh, that really looks like Chase."
Yeah, it's a doppelganger I didn't know I had.
Hey, Christine, how much is that tip worth?
But that's what I'm saying. Somebody could call in and say, "Oh my gosh, I saw him at the supermarket." You don't have the neck tat though. But.
Yeah, no neck tats for me.
Or maybe that's why you have the beard to cover it up.
There we go, right? See, it's all part of the plan.
It's all part of the plan. So you do have cold cases on your website for anyone who, is looking for that kind of information. Where do people go for that information?
So fccrimestoppers.com is a wealth of information on both active and cold cases. We also have a bunch of links to a lot of our partner agencies as well, and they do a phenomenal job of keeping unsolved crimes up to date and also wanted suspects as well. So we just implore everyone to look through those cases, and it's easier than ever to submit a tip. There's always a button right there on the bottom to report what you know, and whether it's something minor or something major, it's always anonymous. And if you aren't as tech savvy as some of us, you can always call in information as well to Star Tips or 1-866-845-TIPS. And you never know what a small piece of information might have. In one case, it might lead to an arrest in a 39-year-old cold case homicide. You never know where it may lead.
How do you choose which cold cases get featured?
So with our digital press conference series, we partner with Project Cold Case, and they're a nonprofit that really advocates for victims of homicides, their families, and kind of helps them throughout the entire process. And they really help direct families to our press conference that are willing to speak, that are willing to sort of engage in this public outreach. So we want to do as many as possible, but right now we're doing one a quarter, and we have a bunch slated ready to go, and we're hoping to continue this just moving forward, and we're open to families and just trying to get as many on there as we can.
And what are some of the ways that people who maybe don't have a tip or don't haven't witnessed a crime or anything like that, but love the work that you're doing and want to be able to support First Coast Crime Stoppers, how do people help? So
we are a nonprofit organization, so a large majority of our ability to have an impact in the community comes from community donations. And we have a Support Us page on our website that you're more than welcome to look at and make donations if you're so gracious. We also have multiple fundraising events throughout the year if you want to translate that support into either a golf tournament or a sporting clay shoot, but then also just being advocates for our organization, talking about Crime Stoppers, what we offer, because while you may not have any information to report, you never know who might have that, and just having conversations. So it's a really mixture of many different ways. We even have opportunities for volunteers as well. So we have all that information on our website. So if you're always interested, you can always email or call us. Usually it's me who'll answer the phone, so you hear my voice again. But we're always looking for people to help out in a variety of different ways.
What types of volunteer opportunities do you have?
So we do a lot of grassroots community events. So whether they're at fairs, whether they're at high schools, middle schools, talking to students, or even right now we're doing the JSO district town halls and having volunteers there to just help us out, spread the word. We have a bunch of different opportunities for that, and we actually did the opening of the beaches parade this year. So we got a nice a 6-seater golf cart. So if you like to ride around a golf cart on the beach and wave at some people as you go by, there's an opportunity for you.
Now
so.
you will have people calling and saying, I want the golf cart.
Volunteer. Well, there we go, right? Yes, the Crime Stopper golf cart. So.
The Crime Stoppers golf cart. And you do have an event coming up, and your events fill up pretty quickly. Because I think by the time you come on here to plug them, so to speak, I think they're usually pretty close to full. So what is your next event? We'll get way ahead of it.
Yeah, so we're looking at our 22nd annual golf tournament at a Marsh Landing on Monday, October 19th. And last year we sold out. It was our most attended golf tournament that we've ever had in the 22 years. But yeah, our foursomes, they fill up fast. But we are also looking for constantly our corporate sponsors, looking for dinner sponsors, banquet hall sponsors, all the fun stuff that comes along that. But if you do like golf, and Marsh Landing is a heck of a course on the Intercoastal there. So if you want a chance to play a private golf course, it is a great opportunity. And 100% of the proceeds go to First Coast Crime Stoppers. And I'm very happy to say that every penny of that is directly injected into our local community that you can see when you walk outside your front door.
And because you won't toot your own horn, how effective is First Coast Crime Stoppers in the country?
Oh, just saying we're up there now. Maybe number 2 in the world. What? 2 in the country, 2 in the world.
Is it 2 in the world?
So 2 in the world, and we're looking at right now number 1 in the state of Florida. We bounce back and forth, number 1, number 2 in the U.S., and then worldwide we were number 2 last month. So. You are so humble, and you would never have said that unless I gave you an opportunity. First Coast Crime Stoppers Executive Director Chase Robinson, thanks so much for being here. Thank you.